Don't say we don't do nice things for you here at Highbury Squad Central. It's two-a-days, as they say in the United States. In England, it's known as a double bill. We had the women's show earlier this morning, and now Super Kev returns. We have a very special guest in the house, and we have an important question regarding the Arsenal. Let's roll. It's hump day, people.
Mind the gap between the train and the platform. Please stand clear of the discussion doors. The next stop is Highbury Squad.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the show. Of course, returning is my podcast brother from another mother, Mr. Super Kev, Super Kevin Campbell. Squaddies. Addy. John knows. A very special guest tonight, Mr. John Smythe, who is XRA. Listen, Kev, we've got XRAF in the house. I'm just saying, they better be careful tonight.
He's a flyer. Flyer machine.
Yes. He's truly represented his country, okay? I know a lot of you are probably watching the England game because you're hoping for Saka to come off the bench. And some of you will be listening to this on replay. A lot of you will tonight. But John, welcome to the show. We're going to learn a little bit more about you. How are you doing?
Thank you for having me. I'm honoured to be here.
Well, I've been wanting to. I hear, Kev. What is this? There's a heat wave going on in England. Is that right? You're feeling it up there?
I'll tell you what. Short sleeves. It's lovely. It's beautiful. Loving it. Your short sleeve job.
You can always rely on, England doing dodgy weather and giving you sunshine at inopportune times. Kev, this question comes up all the time about your wine bottles, and because Archangel is my enforcer on YouTube. He's worried about Newman. No, he's asking if your bottles are filled behind you. It comes up all the time.
None of your business. None of your business.
None of your bizwax.
None of your business. You leave my bottles alone.
Drink water.
Hey, I got water. Don't worry about that.
I don't have anything to drink today. Excuse me, John. Let's start off the proceedings by learning just a little bit about you, and then at the end of the show, we're going to let everyone know about the charity football match and what you're doing with regards to the defibrillator stuff and how the charity match will help. But let everyone know, Kev, he became an Arsenal fan in a vintage year, but I'm going to hand it over to John now to let everyone know a little bit more about him.
Cool. Well, it's quite a long tale, but I'll try and shorten it down. So I started supporting Arsenal about 1989, I would estimate. I was about 8 years old. My parents had no interest in football. None of my family did. I had a couple of friends who liked playing football. One was a Man United fan. The other was a Liverpool fan. And I didn't really know any other teams at the time. But I remember quite specifically Liverpool were playing against Arsenal in the old black and yellow kit from 1989. And it was from that day I said, well, you know what? No one else around here supports Arsenal. I'm going to support Arsenal, and I've supported Arsenal ever since, basically.
Love it.
And
good year. Good year.
Not a bad year to start supporting the Arsenal. Good evening, Magic Mike. And I know that you've done some good things with Magic Mike and his podathon on charity. And as I said, we'll get to that towards the end of the show. But let's get stuck in, right, guys? I was reading some articles, one in particular on Football London yesterday, maybe, and I was like, this is very intriguing. And it was talking, Kev and John, about how Arsenal have identified their next captain, and the subject of Ødegaard keeps coming up. He's captain of Norway. He's young still. He's 20. Is he 22, Kev? Ødegaard, 22,
23? 23, yeah.
And I just started thinking to myself, gosh, when was the last time we had an amazing captain, right? So I went a little bit back, and you don't have to go too far back. And I'm not going to go like into the 40s, 50s and 60s. I just wanted to start really where probably a lot of our audience remember Kevin John. And that's probably with Frank McClintock, 1967 to 1973. That 1971 double winning team really did become icons in many ways and set the tone for, you know, the Arsenal Football Club and their journey. And obviously we've hit bumps on the road. Kev knows more than anyone. We've had huge successes along the way, and we've hit some bumps in the road as well. And then when you move away from Frank, and I'm just going to give you the big guns, and then Kev can kind of kick us off here. And of course, Kev, the FA Cup team in the late 70s, also awesome, and that win against Man United was epic. Again, leaders all over the pitch, including the captain in that particular squad. But I want to fast forward that a little bit more to your era. 1988, Tony Adams takes over as captain. He was captain for 14 years, you guys. 14 years. 21. I think Fabregas beats him by just a couple of months, and you guys can correct me. 2 First Division titles, 2 Premier League titles, 3 FA Cups, 2 League Cups, and the European Cup Winners' Cup. As we all believe and know, he is Mr. Captain Fantastic. There's never been a greater captain at Arsenal than him. And Patrick Vieira then stepped into his shoes and for other reasons became just a glorious captain for our club. The Invincibles, and of course that Manchester United FA Cup win in 2005. But he was only captain for 3 years. So Kev, before I go into the more modern era, can you talk me through, especially, I know you love Frank. I told Frank once that he just is the Arsenal James Bond. Take me through those 3, and in particular the man that you played alongside in Tony.
Well, I think Frank McClintock epitomised everything that was Arsenal, especially back then, because we weren't the greatest team, but what we had about us was a lot of grit, determination, and toughness. I think that really built the foundation for Arsenal moving forward, because the toughness we had, we built over a few seasons, and then we got to the 70-71 season where it all kind of clicked into place. And Frank McClintock was the leader. And when you're leading a band of men, John will probably know this as well as anybody, your leader is the person who sets the tone. Always, he sets the tone. And to do the double, well, Frank McClintock was awesome. Absolutely awesome. And then obviously in that side, a young Pat Rice was coming in, who then obviously took over later on as a captain down the way. And late 70s, he was captain in some of the, 3 FA Cups in 3 years, lose 2 and win 1. Probably one of my favourite FA Cup final ever against a Manchester United team that was great. And what a finish. But Pat Rice, again, I think he inherited that toughness, that will to win, never say die attitude. You know, it's all of these traits is what we're searching for now. We see Kieran Tierney go up and down the left-hand side and everybody's saying he should be captain. No, he needs to concentrate on his own game. Again, the Arsenal captain is more than being able to go up and down the left-hand side. There's a responsibility. And you know what, Sophie? Tony Adams obviously takes it over and leads by example for 14 years. But from Frank McClintock to Pat Rice to David O'Leary at times had it as well, and Tony Adams, the same vein runs through those players, is that toughness and mentality that we lack right now.
John, you've been in the army, you've been RAF. Kev and I were talking, and we talk a lot on this show about, getting men to follow you to the end of the earth, believing in you. Getting 1 to do that is something. Getting 11 to do that plus subs is something else. Can you tell me what Tony Adams meant to you, or Patrick Vieira, and how you can compare it in terms of your own career? And I think we all look for leadership, and especially in times of trouble, and good times as well, because those leaders kind of are sometimes the reason why a team can excel.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to shock you now, and I'm going to tell you that actually my job now is I'm a police sergeant, so I know about leading people when times are in trouble, when when the pressure's on and stuff. I think that Kev was talking the other night, and I did post something on Twitter, but no one ever takes any notice of my Twitter post, to be fair. You were talking about motivation, and I think there was this whole argument that Arteta doesn't necessarily motivate the team enough for them to go out and get the results. And I think Kev was trying to put forward the point that actually the good players, the real decent players, motivate themselves. And I posted up a quote from Sir Clive Woodward, who was the England rugby manager from 2003, and he said something along the lines of he believed that actually motivation was the biggest load of bollocks there is, because if you have the right people in the room, on the bus, motivation takes care of itself, doesn't it? And I think that that's what Tony Adams and Vieira had, and I don't think we've really seen that in the Emirates era. And I wonder actually whether a lot of it's got to do with the fact that we moved from Highbury. You go to Highbury and it's a magical place. All the history, you can almost feel it, can't you, when you're there? I mean, as I said to you before we started, unfortunately I never got to watch Arsenal play at Highbury. One, because I couldn't afford it. Two, I was in and out of the country a lot, and can make excuses all day long, to be fair, but I didn't get to go there. But I have been there, before matches at Emirates, and even now you just get the feel for the place. And I think a lot of it could be linked to the history. The players, the captains that maybe we put in the Emirates area now, they don't feel that kind of, maybe the passion and the electricity that ran through Highbury that maybe gave them that extra edge. But
well, as a fan, I can definitely attest to that. There was something so magical about Highbury. It was, when people talk about your home club stadium being church, I mean, it really is. You make friends that you just see at the game. You may not even see them in your social life or outside of the football. And the players become part of that essence and that feeling. And, and it always felt like at Highbury, look, there were times where I know fans got really testy, especially in, the early 80s and stuff like that. But it always felt, from when I was going there, I loved standing standing and sitting, the North Bank. And it always felt like we were behind the team. It always felt like we had their backs. And I feel like when you feel like your own players maybe don't have each other's backs, I think that's where there's a disconnect for the fans to then have that support. And I wanted to twist it just a little bit here, because Kev went from being a player, being led by Tony Adams, to then becoming the first ever black captain for Everton Football Club, which in itself is an incredible milestone. That's trailblazing stuff. And Kev, I want you to talk to the squaddies and stuff and everyone in chat about that transition and what it meant to you, because there is a massive difference between being a player and being responsible to be a player for that club that you wear the shirt of. But then when you take on the captaincy, like you said, it just brings on a whole other, level of responsibility. Can you talk us through that transition for you and what it meant for you?
Well, obviously it meant it was an honor to be able to lead the team, lead the football club, because that's what you are. You're kind of the franchise player at the football club, and you realize that when you are the captain, you are one part of the cog, but you've got to make sure all the other wheels can work, because everybody's different. Some you can leave alone, some you need to speak to, some you need to G them up, others you just need to look at them. So you've got to work out the whole squad of what's what. Then you've got to know how to deal with the management, the coaching staff, the masseurs, the girls who do the tickets. There's so much more to it. And then you got to deal with the fans. Because don't forget, when you're captain, it ain't just about your performance. If the team's not doing well, they're coming to you. What's going on? So you have to have, you have to get the blinkers off. And it's such a wider view of a football club that you'll ever believe. So again, the armband is just a little part of it. It's all the relationships that you have to manage, as well as perform yourself, as well as trying to get the team to perform. It's not an easy job.
Kev, and John, I think you will agree with me. If there's two stadiums that you can kind of compare, and Kev played at both for a number of years, it's Highbury and Goodison Park. There's something about the two of them for me that almost felt like, not you could substitute one for the other, but the closeness, the way the pitch was just so close to the crowd. The essence of Toffee fans. I always said that, you know, Arsenal's my love and Everton might be my mistress. There's just something about them that, you know, it appeals. They're such an easy club to like. But I wanted to ask this question to Kev, and then John, I'll go to you, because Kev, when people talk about captain and the responsibility, I've heard a lot and I've read a lot about players saying, I've got to get them tickets, and it's just a nightmare when you're in a final and you've got to do this and this and that. But community-wise, fan-wise, people-wise, and I'm sure as Police Sergeant John, there's so much that you, as the police, you have to do in the community and help, and obviously what you're doing with your charity and stuff like that. But Kev, that happens a lot, and even maybe more so in the modern game, with so much going on and the demand of what people expect from a captain of a football club. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, when you become captain, you know, you get post, for instance. Yeah, you get post. So let's just say I was getting 200 letters a week. As captain, I was getting 1,500 letters a week, for instance. Wow. It goes up exponential because, again, you're the figurehead. Everybody looks to you, you know, to lead. People look to you to lead the club. They want to make sure, and they want to ask you everything, and, you know, anything what's going on around the club. I mean, I was getting asked all sorts about, you know, why is the coffee so bad at, you know, at one kiosk. You know, it was amazing. No, you know, epic. Sophie, no, you know what, you laugh, but it's every little thing, because I suppose they felt they could approach me in a letter and ask me these things, see if I could sort it out, you know, pass it to the right person, that type of thing. And, you know, all you could do is put it on somebody's desk or pass it on through Alan Myers, who you know pretty well, that it gets to the right person, whatever. But, you know, everything from, it's hard enough playing and getting the performances on the pitch, let alone having to deal with all the other bits and pieces. So, listen, I understand, and I know it's something us Gooners are used to, having quality captains. But do you know something? Having played with Tony Adams, having been coached and nurtured by Pat Rice, having been in the company of the great Frank McClintock, having played against Patrick Vieira, having spoken to Patrick Vieira even after his Arsenal career, and he loves the club, etc. Quality captains are hard to find. Let me tell you, they are like gold dust. And I mean gold dust. Because, you know, so I'm just going to mention this. Koscielny was captain of Arsenal. And look at the way he left the club. To me, that was a traitor's way. If you're captain, be a captain. Go to America, do your time, and come back. And if you have to go, then you go. Don't do it the way he done it. That, to me, that's not captain of Arsenal material.
No, and you bring up a good one. I'm going to go through the list now, and I'm going to start with John here. But Magic Mike, who's in the chat tonight, was there when I asked, and I remember Andrew from Arsblog saying, you know, you had balls to ask that question, because it's when Koscielny refused to come on the US tour and he was demanding a transfer, and Xhaka was sitting next to Emery in the presser. And I mean, Xhaka had already killed Mike, I think, with his eyes. And I just said to Unai, I'm like, captain of Arsenal, it's a disgrace. Like, he's not here, and the way he's acting. He goes, what are you doing about this, basically, is what I said. And of course, Unai tried to answer the best he could, you know, given the circumstances and stuff. But that's definitely one that we're going to get to. John, I'm going to start with you. So I have a list. I have a list of cursed captains from the Emirates era and maybe captains that dodged the curse. And I'm going to start with a player, and I don't want to be controversial here by mentioning him, but he's the greatest player that's ever played in the Premier League. Let's get this right. Right. Thierry Henry captained the Arsenal Football Club in that 2006 Champions League final as well. And that was the year, guys, that I think he broke Ian Wright's goal scoring record as well. But what happened since he was made, once he was made captain, we lost the Champions League final, and then a little bit after, boom, I want to go to Barcelona. Obviously, Patrick Vieira was the captain when he was there. Was Thierry, as great a player as Thierry was, do you think he was a born leader as well? Or was he just the type of leader that just let his football do the talking? Because Kev talks about that a lot as well. What did Thierry Henry mean to you?
Well, he's probably one of, if not the greatest player of all time for Arsenal Football Club, but I'm not so sure that he was captain's material. I mean, he had big boots to follow in Vieira, didn't he? But I don't know, just because you're a great footballer with lots of ability doesn't necessarily mean that you're fit to be captain. I mean, Tony Adams says himself, doesn't he? He may not have had the greatest ability. He wasn't the fastest in that, but he's predominantly, in my mind, the best captain we've ever had, well, certainly I've ever seen. Because he had that commitment to the club. And my concern now is for our current captains is they want the status maybe without the responsibility. I mean, I can't imagine that Granit Xhaka got much fan mail, bags of fan mail to open like Kev did in that, because, well, he's obviously not a very popular chap, is he? But I don't know. I wasn't really sold on Thierry Henry being captain. I think he was maybe made captain because he'd done the club such good service when Vieira left. It just seemed natural to replace him with him. But it was like, people saying Thierry Henry should come back and be manager of Arsenal Football Club. Well, just because he's, one of our greatest legends. Well, just because you've been a great forward for Arsenal doesn't necessarily mean you can come back and be the manager and be a great leader on the team. You got to appreciate that there's leaders and there's followers, and there are very few good leaders out there, in my opinion, and it's the same in all walks of life, really.
Kev, what's your take on Thierry? I mean, obviously we know about him, but you often talk about, you don't have to wear the armband to be a leader. And he definitely, if you listen to his interviews and his teammates, I mean, they love the guy, of course, but he had a little bit of a selfish chip in him as well towards the end. What's your take on Thierry?
Well, I think he's a striker, isn't he? And you have to have that selfish mentality at times. I think it was more captain by stature, because his stature at the club was so great. And after losing Patrick, I think the next one up who had that stature was Thierry Henry. People could follow him without him being the vocal leader, the person who, because at times, let's be honest, we know Thierry Henry could get moody. Great player that he was. He wasn't the type of, roll your sleeves up and get the team really revved up. But just him being captain and his stature at the football club, I think people would still follow him. So it was maybe captain in a different way. That leader that we were used to wasn't there anymore. Yeah,
I would agree with that. Okay, now let's shift gears and get to the how about I'm gonna finish the were they cursed or not, because believe it or not, I'm gonna mention a name right now, you guys. In terms of the Emirates era, where I actually think maybe he wasn't a cursed captain, even though he was in the twilight of his career. Mikel Arteta. He lifted the FA Cup, and I think he was a decent leader. I think, this is why sometimes when people talk about him in the manner in which they do, he was a lovely player and he was a very respectable captain. Sometimes I think people protect him as though he was a super legend at the club, John. But there's no doubt Mikel was very classy when he was captain at Arsenal Football Club.
I can't even remember how old he was when he was captain, but wasn't he coming to the end of his prime when he was captain? So he'd had quite a bit of experience in it and stuff, hadn't he, behind him?
Yes, very much so.
I don't know. He didn't really do it for me, to be honest. I mean, it's like I said to you before we came on. I thought Van Persie was all right, and I know I'm going to get absolutely slated in the comments.
You're getting battered, John. I'm telling you.
Hold on. I'll get there. I'm going to get there.
Right,
Don't jump. Don't. Yeah,
just for me, Mikel Arteta is just he was an average player, an average captain, and he's an even more average manager. He's just an all-round average guy. I think that's just his kind of speed. Unfortunately, it wasn't for me, to be honest.
James says Arteta, for what he did with that squad, he was a top captain. Kev, he broke all the cliques up and made that team more unified and together. Do you agree with that?
I don't know about top captain. I thought he was a decent captain. You know, your top captains we've already mentioned. But I think Arteta was a decent captain. He was a decent player. You know, not great, but he was a decent all-round guy. I think what Johnny's getting at. And I agree with that. I think he done a decent job at Arsenal. And, you know, again, as a captain has to do, if there's cliques in the dressing room, you have to break it up. You have to break them up because cliques destroy your dressing room and the squad camaraderie.
Kev, he's been busy doing that at the Arsenal in his career, for sure. Okay, let's get to the crux of the subject tonight, who I believe were the cursed captains. And I'm going to start off with a fan non-favourite, William Gallas. I think the Birmingham strop in 2008, the sitting in the centre circle, Wenger had to go fetch him. I mean, you just have to read quotes from people like Jans Lehmann, and he criticised his teammates. Yeah,
come on, show it. Off with his head. Go on. That's the curse.
Oh, yeah. Do you want me to get the...
get
how
the
about
samurai.
we just bring out Newman's eye?
Don't show that. That's Newman now. Don't shake. There you go.
This one.
There you go. Off with his head. Yeah.
Kev, how much would you have liked to have done this to him?
Listen, again, when I saw that happen at the time, oh, my God.
That was embarrassing, wasn't it?
I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. You know, and for whatever went on, we know what went on. It was a terrible injury, etc.
Mm-hmm.
It's your captain who then has to get everybody balanced because you know what? There's a game to be won. You have to be focused, and after the game, then you can go and you can console and do whatever and make sure everybody's all right. But the bottom line is, and I know it may sound a little bit hard, but this is professional football. Let's win the game and then we take care of it.
Yeah, John, what's your take on the Gallas thing? Were you there? Do you remember?
I vaguely remember. He's just an embarrassment, wasn't he? Like you said, I think that basically sums it up, having a tantrum. But I just think that maybe meant the mentality of what is expected of captains in this era compared to what it was maybe like in the 90s has completely changed. I mean, obviously I don't know this because I'm never in the change room. Kev might know, but I mean, who draws the line between, you know, who's making the calls about cliques and stuff? Is the manager delegating that to the captain, or is the captain expected to sort that out himself? I mean, it's a mystery.
It's a good question. That's a good question, Kev.
Who's the actual enforcer?
I've said captain. It's the captain. The manager. Most of the time, the manager is not in the dressing room with the players. Most of the time, he engages with the players when obviously going to train, etc. But in the actual dressing room of the players, day in, day out, the players are the ones, and the captains and the experienced players are the ones that police it. So when you do have cliques, believe you me, like Arsenal have had in the last few years, it is very disruptive. Very. And you need a strong dressing room to sort it out.
Yeah, and I love Sean's comment because I'm going to bring up a few of these, Sean, and I think you've hit the nail on the head. One of the biggest issues was that Arsenal went through spells of using the armband as a tool to try and entice impending want-away stars into staying. That's maybe where Unai Emery got the 5 captains idea. But I'll move on to the next one. And again, you guys, this is not the quality of the player, the talent of the player, what the player meant to the Arsenal. This is just about potential cursed captains. Arsenal's youngest ever captain was Cesc Fabregas. I actually think Cesc, as much as we love him, I think he's one of the most underappreciated players. And I think that's because of the manner in which he left. And of course, he went on to play for Chelsea. He inherited the armband from Gallas. And he immediately had an injury that kept him out for, I think it was 4 or 5 months. And I often say, like, if Cesc can be captain at 21, we always have this conversation about why can't Tierney be captain now or Saka at 20. It's just, is it different? But as soon as he was made captain, he never won a trophy. He never. It's so bizarre, Kevin, to think that Fabregas never won a trophy as captain of Arsenal Football Club.
Yeah, there's a lot to, like I said, there's a lot of moving parts when you're captain, and maybe that took away a bit from him as a player. You know, I thought he led by example most of the time. He was our best player, but you know, as a captain, no. Cesc Fabregas was a quality player.
Is this the lesson to be learned? Kev? Is it the lesson to be learned? Like, did that take away from his game? There was so much pressure on Fabregas, and like Sean said in his comment, John, as well, is that we literally put the team on his back, and he was young. And he was so talented. I mean, the guy was a beautiful footballer, and we got to appreciate, you know, and see him play. But at 21 years old, it goes back to my question about leading men. Was it too young, John, in your opinion?
I'm going to say yes. I mean, this is a little bit like what goes on in the military, I suppose. You know, you can be a long-serving senior non-commissioned officer, loads of experience, much older, and then you get some kind of young officer coming, and they don't carry the respect, you know, because they've got nothing under their belts. And I really believe that captains need to, you know, add a bit of time. They need a bit of age with them to carry them through. I don't think, you know, that necessarily young captains get that kind of backing from, you know, maybe older players, more senior players, who maybe feel a little bit disgruntled by the fact that somebody younger has been chosen over them to lead the team. And I think it must be difficult. I think Tony Adams must have been a one-off, because nobody's ever really matched him and his ability to lead, I don't think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I find someone was talking as well that certain players who left, that, you know, the burden then increased on Cesc, but
on Fabregas,
looking back, yeah, on Fabregas, yeah, Kev. All right, next one. Koscielny. Kevin brought him up a little earlier. He was made permanent captain by Unai Emery in 2018. And struck by the curse, in my opinion, because I think he only played 16 or 17 games that season. And then not long ago, after that, Kev rejected the opportunity to re-sign and threw his toys out the pram and absolutely acted like a juvenile delinquent, really, and not captain material at all. How were you surprised by Kos and his behaviour? Did you expect that from him, or did you like him as a player? Were you a Kos fan?
Yeah, I liked him. I thought he was a decent defender. I thought when he got the captaincy, I accepted. Yeah, he was okay. But you know, when you know there's a weakness in Arsenal, you know, against the bigger teams we were getting blown away, etc. And you think to yourself, as a captain and a leader, I want to see him. I want to see him passionate. I want to see him, you know, getting older people and pushing them into position, and, you know, showing some fight. And we didn't really see that. He showed more fight wanting to leave the club than I'd seen on the pitch. And that's, for me, you know, I didn't expect it, but I wasn't surprised.
Yeah. John Boy says Koscielny was truly a cursed captain. It's very apparent he was promised something by management that failed to materialise. Well, that sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Hmm. Yeah, I think again he was average, wasn't he? And he went off in a bit of a tantrum. I don't know. I don't really fully understand what the problem is with these people, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay, let's get to the next one. The villain. Probably one of the most hated captains, even more than Gallas, I think. Personally, when you look back and you read all the autobiographies and stories from many journalists, Robin van Persie. He had every right to leave Arsenal. The only problem is that we sold him to one of our biggest rivals ever in the Premier League. He took us to third that season, as John reminded you at the top of the show. He scored 30 goals in 38 games. I loved watching Robin van Persie, but once again did the curse strike in usual Arsenal fashion. He refused to sign a contract after that and went to Manchester United. Kev, Robin van Persie, what a player. Maybe again, not a great captain.
Yeah, great player. Someone the club really looked after because he had real injury problems, didn't he? If we're honest, you know, we nurtured him back. We looked after him. He got a lot of love from Arsenal fans. And I just think the way he left the club kind of reflects on his captaincy. Although I thought he led by example in that season where he scored 30 goals in 38 games. But his legacy will always be leaving Arsenal. I know he had to be sold. Leaving Arsenal to go to Manchester United and then winning the winning the league for Manchester United in what was an unbelievable season for him.
I have to say, and Kev, one of the most
sticks in the teeth a bit,
and one of the most unbelievable goals, that Rooney pass to. I think I vomited. I think I literally threw up when that happened. John, as a fan, to me that one really hurt. That one really stung, and it was just another example of, you know, we added Nasri, Clichy. Yeah. Go on, mate.
Listen, with Robin van Persie, though, I mean, he's given his account now, hasn't he? He wanted the club to go in a different direction, is what he said, than what maybe the club was willing to invest in and go in. And he kind of gave them an ultimatum, didn't he? And said, you kind of back where I see us going and invest or I'm off. And they basically said, well, there's the door, mate. I don't think the hate that he gets is necessarily justified. And I think maybe, I mean, hindsight's a wonderful thing. Maybe if the club had backed him, he would have brought, you know, more success to Arsenal. But yeah, he did suffer with injury. He was phenomenal. I mean, I'm a fan of Van Persie because when I was younger, people used to say I look like him.
People in chat think you look like Jake Gyllenhaal.
I know. I don't even know who that is, though. So that's who is he? Who is Jake Gyllenhaal?
He's a very successful actor, actually. I actually worked with him on a film called The Day After Tomorrow. He's very handsome, very nice guy as well. So yeah.
You take that, John. You take that.
I'm taking that. Yeah, I'm taking that at 40 years old. Yeah, but I didn't mind Van Persie. For me, he was a really good player, and obviously he was there at he started in the Highbury, didn't he, and then went on to the Emirates, and I think we should have kept him personally. I mean, he kind of left us with egg on our faces, didn't he, when he went to United? But I mean, it could have been worse. He could have gone to Spurs, couldn't he?
I think.
And then really hated him.
Yeah, I mean that would have been really, really bad. But no, I
just think that Van Persie, he went through the Highbury area and he was with the Invincibles, wasn't he? And stuff. I just felt like he had that kind of passion, you know, like the likes of Roy Keane say every game you go into war, you're going into battle, and I think Van Persie had that desire for Arsenal. But then
he's also that player that you love to pay to go and watch and see. I think that's what we lack now at Arsenal and have lacked for a number of years.
But also, as a captain, you need the supporting cast. You really need the supporting cast to back you. Because would Tony Adams have been that captain if he didn't have the supporting cast with him? Would Vieira have been that captain if he didn't have the supporting cast? You need the supporting cast to be able to follow you and perform. And unfortunately, Fabregas didn't have it, and Van Persie really didn't have it. Although we won certain games, again, there was times where we played against some of the big teams and we got blown away. So,
I guess when you look at
tough.
I guess when you look at John Terry, he was always surrounded by great players. You know, and I think John Terry's probably the last of the old-fashioned, you know, Adams-esque captain leader. You know, I know a lot of us don't, you know, like John Terry for many reasons, but he had Carvalho. I mean, he had in front of him, you know, he had a great midfield always. He had Ashley Cole. He had, you know,
he had Makalele in front of him.
Makalele, the great wall of Makalele.
You're right, though. I mean, when you watch John Terry, I mean, every game you could see he was putting everything on the line, wasn't he, for his team and for the club. I mean, didn't he get knocked out in one game and stuff like that? Just, you know,
he got kicked right in the face. Could you remember? He put his head there and got booted, knocked out clean.
And Tony Adams is a bit like that. I mean, he had a few broken noses now. I just think our players of this era are just quite spoilt, and it's all a bit mamby-pamby, isn't it?
Yes, weak sauce.
Yeah, but I mean, obviously, good players will make you look good. But I think that, you know, a good captain as well can get better out of poor players, and we haven't had that for a long time. And it's something we need to find quite quickly. You know, there is scope within the current Arsenal team, I think, to get better out of them than where we're at now. It's just we haven't got that. I've said for a while we haven't got that leadership on the pitch in the mount. I don't agree with Aubameyang being captain because I don't think he sets a very good example. I don't think he's got that much influence within the dressing room. Yeah, he's a senior player, but I think he just doesn't really strike me as being somebody that really not aggressive but passionate, you know, and a passion speech before the beginning of a game in the dressing room where he's really getting the lads geared up and stuff, you know. I just don't feel that way.
No, and yesterday he posted a picture on his Instagram, time to refocus, and he's wearing some gear and stuff like that. And I'm thinking, when did you focus? You know,
I mean, bloody hell, he turned up late, didn't he, that time? For God's sake,
he did. And also, when you look at some of these other names John Terry played with, Deschamps, Essien, let's not forget Michael Ballack as well. I mean, gee whiz.
Again, you've got the squad. Once you've got the squad, you know, talent is there, but the attitude is there as well. That's the thing. If they're not playing well, that team could grind. That team could battle.
And they reloaded, Kev, season after season after season. Reload. It's like, I give the analogy of Tom Brady won all those Super Bowls with Belichick because what did they do, right? He had weapons. They made sure they had a good defense, but he had wide receiver, he had Wes Welker, he had Randy Moss, he had, all of these weapons. I'm not sure if Randy ever won one with him, but,
no, he didn't. They broke records. Randy Moss was only at the Patriots for 2 seasons.
2 seasons, yeah.
Yeah, only 2 seasons. And you know what they always done? They never bought the top guy. They never traded for the top guys. They never in the draft go for the top guys. They always went for guys who can work in that system.
Yep.
But they
people
knew
like Gronk, grafters.
Exactly. But what they knew was they have to have the right attitude to play in New England. Yeah. Just like Arsenal used to recruit George Grant, you have to have the right attitude. Early Wenger, you have to have the right attitude. You've got to be hungry. You've got to want it week in, week out. And that reflects on the pitch.
Definitely. A good one from Mo here. Stevie G suffered from the lack of support at Liverpool. They never got a Torres every year or a Suarez every year. They went through some dross at Liverpool.
Some pain. They went through
some pain at Liverpool. And maybe, James, you're right, and a few others of you put this in. Maybe Vincent Kompany was the last of those kind of great captains. And
but again,
Christoph,
But again, you look at Kompany, look at his supporting cast.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, serious players around him all the time. And Christoph, this is our favourite. Kevin, I like this. Do your job. It's the easiest coach. Just do your job. Okay, let's fire these next ones off. Kev, probably one of the most injury-prone captains in the history of Arsenal Football Club. Was it Thomas Vermaelen? You know, Per and Cos became that partnership, and even through the injury, he was club captain on the bench. And then he too left, flirted with Man United for a little bit, but eventually moved to Barcelona. Vermaelen may be one of those players that would have been, you know, a bit like Ledley King. You never saw the best of Ledley King because he was so injury prone. Maybe Vermaelen didn't have Ledley's talent. But again, kind of weak sauce player, really.
Yeah, you know, when it's going nice, he looks nice.
Mm-hmm.
But when it came to time to really get damn dirty in the trenches, no.
Do you think I was a fool, John? Because at that time, I thought maybe Vermaelen and Koscielny could be our Vidic and Ferdinand.
Well, I can't even, you know, you're talking about this Vermaelen, and I can't even remember him, so you can't have been a very good captain.
There you go, John. There you go. Because he hardly played, really.
He's still playing. He's still playing. I mean, it's amazing what players do when they do leave Arsenal.
Well,
oh, gosh. Yeah, I mean, again, really unfortunate. Then we move on to Mertesacker, who was made captain despite knowing that he had terrible knee issues in 2016.
Sophie,
yeah.
Newman's comment, Vermaelen would have been great with a great defensive coach, proper defensive.
Yes.
Steve Bold was there. If you want to learn it, you tap into him. It's not rocket science.
How does a defensive coach make him a good captain? That's what I'm kind of struggling to
that's
understand.
Newman for you. It's all right.
Our defense was pretty poor during that time, Kev. I mean, that's when we started kind of like, you know, having no discipline at the back. I mean, terrible juvenile mistakes that we're still, you said the other day, still seeing, like can't head a ball away, you know. And Steve Bold was there during that time, as much as I respect Boldy, you know.
But what was he allowed to do? That's what you got to ask.
Well, that's 100% correct.
You know, because I believe he only really took the team and the defense a couple of times. One was before that Manchester City game away when we beat Man City at the Etihad. I think we beat them 2-0. But yeah, Wenger didn't want him to do anything with the defense, really. But you know, as a defender, if I want to improve at something and I've got somebody at the club who played in the most successful defense the club have ever had, one season only conceding 18 goals in the whole season, don't you think you would tap into him as a player? I want to improve. I want to get better. But they never do because they don't want to.
And also, I think even Dixon was vocal about the fact that, you know, Steve Bold really didn't have the authority to, you know, work with the players. And Mike put up a comment as well about Vermaelen wanting to have conversations. And Wenger was a control freak, you know. This is why you never saw Tony Adams at the club. This is why you never saw Super Kevin Campbell at the club, or, you know, players that are a little bit more vocal. Did you just make up that story, Mike? That's terrible. But no, these are conversations that have happened. A lot of ex-players have said that Steve Bold never had the authority to implement his mentoring and advice the way that he wanted to. And I think that we've all kind of seen that over the years, and with no improvement. And someone mentioned Senderos. I mean, think of some of the players we bought. Sigan, Senderos. That's a whole other show. We're not going to get into that right now. Mertesacker, Kev, 2017, he was dead, John and Kev. But I tell you something, he'll forever be remembered for that FA Cup final against Chelsea, where he took young Rob Holding under his wing and played the absolute game of his life.
Talked him through it,
was
didn't
the
he?
end. Yep.
He guided him through it. It was what we played. It was like 5 at the back, wasn't it? And Mertesacker was like the centre. And he told Rob Holding through it, get tight, sit off. Real experience. And that's what experience can do for you. But
it was a masterclass, wasn't it, Kev? It was a masterclass from him that day.
for a season though, Sophie, we don't get it. You know, we don't get that during the season. But a one-off, it was superb for sure. And beating Chelsea in an FA Cup final was always sweet.
And now he's at the club, John, and he's bringing up. He has a very important role at the club. But I would say Mertesacker definitely cursed, but a classy player and represented the club always.
He's one of the better ones from the Emirates era, though, isn't he? Don't you think?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that.
He had some actual leadership ability, which, unlike a lot of our captains, is often found wanting, isn't it? Like you say, in that particular match, the way he was kind of dictating stuff, and that is kind of the attributes you would expect from a decent captain. But I think he's one of the better ones, to be fair.
All right, so I'll leave you with these two because they're currently in the squad. Kev, Xhaka and Oba. Listen, Aubameyang, 60 goals over 2 seasons, lifted the FA Cup. But has the burden become too much for him? And as for Xhaka...
Let's not even talk about Xhaka. Let's talk about Oba being captain.
Talk about Oba, Kev. Come on.
Because for me, again, it's a bit like the Thierry. I'm not saying he is Thierry Henry, but I think it's more of a stature. The stature of Oba at the time and what was wanting to be implemented. Oba was the lead guy. He's a world-class striker. He's the finisher. He's someone that they were hoping could fire the team forward so everybody could follow. But you need the pieces. You do. You need the pieces. And for years now, we haven't had the pieces. We haven't had the pieces. And it actually shows Oba up. Because there's so much to be done at this team. And Oba isn't the most vocal. Oba is more, I look after my game and I'll score a couple of goals and I'll lead that way. Which seems to be most of the modern football now anyway.
Yeah. What's your take, John, on... I think we all have similar feelings about Xhaka, but Aubameyang in particular, he saved us those 2 seasons, but doesn't mean the best player in the team is captain material, does it?
Well, he's obviously he was, or probably still is, the star of our team, isn't he? He's got that bit of star quality. And I wondered, actually, after we won the FA Cup and it was on the cards as to whether he was going to sign, and he got offered a big new contract. I wondered if part of his demands was he wanted to be captain. But I don't think he's captain material. He doesn't set a very good example. You don't really see him kind of taking the lead on the pitch. You don't really hear, or he doesn't really kind of have that persona about him on the pitch where he looks like he's trying to dictate stuff and motivate people. In fact, he just seems to go a little bit anonymous. But I just think he was given that because maybe because he demanded it, and 2 because he was seen as like a bit like the talisman, isn't he, for the team. But maybe a bit like the Thierry Henry when he was captain. He was like the star front man, wasn't he? So we'll kind of give it to him. I mean, I'm really going to upset your listeners now because, Magic Mike will probably maybe remember this if he wasn't drunk. That is when I was chatting on his podcast. I actually said I thought that out of everybody, Xhaka was probably the most likely to be our captain because I just felt he had a bit of leadership presence. And I remember specifically that Chelsea match, when David Luiz got sent off and he ended up going centre back. It was when Martinelli scored that wonder goal when he ran the whole length of the pitch and scored, and Bellerin equalised, and then we were down to 10 men most of the match. And he really kind of showed some good leadership there, I thought. You could see because I think David Luiz might have been captain then, actually. I'm not sure. But he kind of took ownership for that match, and he just seemed to be motivating everybody. And that's, I think, how we got through that game. So on that basis, I said, look, out of everybody we've got at the moment, I feel that maybe Xhaka, given how he performed in the Euros as well, he gave a captain's performance. I thought that, he might have been back up to the job. Now, I don't like Xhaka because I was at the Crystal Palace match, when he stormed off and threw the armband. And
I was as well, John. Jeez.
Well, I fully take back my comments about Xhaka might have been probably the most likely to be captain now, because I've clearly seen that he's not. But that was kind of like my little bit of defence and support for Xhaka. But just the way he's kind of presented himself in the last couple of games since the season started, I can't stand the guy. He's too arrogant to be captain, and it's all about him, isn't it? It's not about the club, and I can't stand people with that kind of attitude.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, John, I was the same. I defended him for a really long time, and having met the team here a couple of times, I could see why Emery made him captain at the time, really, because I saw a lot of immaturity during that tour, to be honest with you. So I understood why. And I'll circle back to the top of the show as to why I wanted to talk about this tonight is, because I can see why maybe if Ødegaard works out at Arsenal, he's captain of Norway, he's got a great temperament, he's a really classy guy, Kev, I can see why people might be talking about him as the heir apparent. I don't think you have to be at the club for years and years to lead the team and be captain. Do you agree with that, Kev? If you're a leader and you can do the job, whether it's Gabriel, whether it's Ødegaard. I don't think Thomas Partey's captain material, or Lokonga is 21 years old and was captain of Anderlecht. What's your take on tenure?
Yeah,
in terms of
think
captaincy.
So I don't think you need to be at the club for a number of years. We've just been blessed that we've had captains who's been at the club for a number of years who have cemented that spot. For me, if you're so young and you're captain of your national team, there's more experienced players in that national team than Martin Ødegaard. But Martin Ødegaard's captain. So that must tell you something about what he is, what he stands for, his temperament, etc., etc. So I know a lot of people like Kieran Tierney because he's all that. But sometimes we've discussed it in previous. Kieran Tierney, I think he needs to concentrate on his own game because he needs to play. He needs to play and concentrate on his game because he's had injuries. 1 minute he's doing really well, and he hasn't really started this season really well. Although there's been times where he's been exposed, etc. But he hasn't really had a good start to the season. We hope he's going to improve definitely. Mm-hmm. But I just think that the temperament of Ødegaard, if he's going to be the guy, I believe he's a good communicator. Or else you do not become your national team captain at 22 if you're not a good communicator. He's easy to get along with. He's a team guy. And I think it ticks a lot of boxes. Maybe that roll your sleeves up one, I'm not so sure. But I think he ticks a lot of boxes. And he is low maintenance as well. That's the other thing.
Yeah, low maintenance is key. All right, that wraps up the captain discussion. So clearly, being captain in the Emirates era does have a curse to it, I think is the general consensus, no?
Well, most have, yeah.
Most have, right? Okay, before we let you go tonight, I want John to let us know a little bit about this. This is how he and I connected on social. There is the Defib Derby. It's happening on Sunday, the 19th of September. And John, let us know how you got involved with this, what's happening, how people can get involved. We're all about this. Kevin and I have been talking about this as well. I mean, I know some guys, Jags has an amazing story about this. If it wasn't for a defibrillator and Jags being trained at work to help a colleague, that colleague probably wouldn't have made it. John, tell us a little bit about it.
Right, so there's two elements to this. In March, we decided to set up our own work-based football team just for well-being more than anything. It was just, at the time, we just started out as just a kick about a few of us every week, and then we got challenged to play a football match. And we decided to call ourselves NSK Dons, which is a spin-off MK Dons from League One. NSK is our policing area, and the Dons bit for us is the good old cliche that cops like to sit around eating donuts, which is why our logo has got a donut in the centre of it. top seat in bonus. So we played our first ever match in May, and we were raising money for the Offside Trust, which is now our sponsor. For those who don't know who the Offside Trust are, the Offside Trust was set up by a load of ex-professional footballers on the back of the child sexual abuse scandal in sport in the 80s and 90s, involving the likes of Barry Bennell and other coaches up and down the country. So I'm quite friendly with these guys now. In our first match, we had some ex-professional footballers turn up to our match, which was slightly intimidating, because we're not of a great standard. We're all the wrong side of 35. Moving forward, we've then played a couple of other matches, raising money for local charities and good causes. But then, obviously, the Christian Eriksen thing happened in Euro 2020. And it really struck a chord with me, because many, many years ago, when I was a police officer as opposed to a sergeant, I went to a job just down the road on the outskirts of Grantham where I was working, where a young 8-year-old boy collapsed and died from cardiac arrest. He was literally just playing football in the field with his mates, and we didn't get to him in time. We didn't have a defibrillator anyway, and he died, and that's always really stuck in my mind. So the whole Christian Eriksen thing really resonated with me. We always intended to play a team called British Art Foundation, and for those who don't know who British Art Foundation are, they're a UK-based charity who specialise in raising funds for research into heart-related diseases, and they provide defibrillators and stuff like that. The guy that runs that team is a great lad called Gary Byrne. His dad died a few years ago from a cardiac arrest, and that inspired him to set up the team. And they put the challenge out to us: do you fancy a match? Because everybody wants to play and kick a police officer, let's face it. So we said yeah. And the Highbury United Football Club are like 10 minutes around the corner from me. Aside from supporting Arsenal, I now support them. So I was there on Saturday watching a home match. It's a good excuse, because it's a 10-minute walk from me from my house, and I can have a few beers and then walk back again, and it's all good. I like a bit of grassroots football. But we approached them to say, can we play at your venue? Because at the time our other venue was being reseeded, and having had conversations with them, they said, well, we're trying desperately to get a defibrillator, because there's been a big push by the FA and the Premier League for all clubs to have defibrillators, and the FA and the Premier League are providing grants for 2,000 defibrillators, but that is a drop in the ocean for how many football clubs actually need them. And Highbury United are having a bit of a meltdown, because with COVID and that, all the grassroots football clubs, they ain't got no surplus cash. So I said, well, I'll tell you what, we'll do you a deal. If you let us play and we can use your facilities for the day, we'll raise money for a defibrillator. And so that's what we did. We set it up about 2 months ago, and actually, ironically, the defibrillators turned up today, because we raised all the money for it, which was 1,500 quid. A couple of weeks ago. So we've got the money for the defibrillator, which is going to be hopefully getting plugged in within the next week or two. But and then on Saturday, I don't know if you saw it in the news, but a 17-year-old lad, I can't remember, Dylan Rich, who was playing for West Bridgford, which is right next to, not far from City Ground, just on the outskirts of
Nottingham, yeah.
Had a cardiac arrest, collapsed and died. So we're going to hold a minute's silence for him, but also at our match, just to finish off, our special guest is a young lad called 3-year-old Tommy Smith, and he is one of the youngest persons in the whole country to have an internal defibrillator fitted, because when he was 11 months old, he collapsed and had a cardiac arrest, and his dad saved his life, give him CPR, and they used a defibrillator to restart his heart. But then, in a tragic set of circumstances, his dad died last year of a blood clot, and obviously he misses his dad. His dad was actually on the for Notts County, so we're holding the match in his memory, and in the memory now of the sad the sad story about this lad who died on the weekend playing football. But yeah, I'm passionate about raising defibrillators. One, because of that incident that I went to, and having to deal with the parents and talk to his friends, and it was just devastating. You were just always thinking in the back of your mind, what could have happened if we'd have gone this way in the car, or if we'd just maybe driven a little bit quicker, or we ain't got stuck behind that tractor, or somebody let us overtake a little bit, could we have saved them? It's always played in my mind. But yeah, the Christian Eriksen thing really quite affected me, so I felt compelled to arrange this. And we're looking forward to it. But one thing I was desperately trying to do, I was trying to get somebody. Well, actually, I asked Chris Waddle if he'd play, because he actually turned out last year for a team just on the outskirts of Grantham for a memorial match at a grassroots football team. He scored a really good goal. So I know the guy that played with him, because he works with Chris Waddle. So I said, can you ask Chris Waddle if he'll play for us? But he's never responded, unfortunately. And I've asked quite a few other footballers. I think I must have tagged nearly every single kind of
Yeah.
possibility.
I mean-
I haven't tagged you, Kev, because you never replied to my stuff anyway. But
Kev did a video. Kev did a video for you, didn't he? For was that for
yes,
that
he
was
did.
for
Yeah. To be fair, Kev I did do a little picture of you for you at 4 o'clock this morning, and I saw you like that, so that made me happy. You know, that it was the image of half a young Kev and half an old Kev. It was like, young Kev meets new Kev. That was, I suffer a bit of sleep insomnia at the moment. It would have been so I just sit on my phone doing little things like that. And
well, John, listen, you're doing great things, and you know, players get asked to do a lot of things all the time, and you know, I think this is a great cause. We wanted to get behind it, and we'll repost it again. You're doing really cool work. And the other thing, real quick, 30 seconds before we go, guys. John also put this Kevin Campbell Appreciation Society T-shirt together, and we're going to give this away. You've got a couple of others too, so we'll do that another time and see what we can do, maybe with Mike's charity too, and raise a little bit of money. And as you know, the Highbury squad is always here to support all of these causes from our community. We're going to be doing that a lot this season. Magic Mike will be coming on post-game show Saturday to give Gooners versus Cancer one final push as well, Kev. I know that all this stuff means a lot to you as well.
Yeah, charity. And, you know, when you hear the stories, it's a lot of pain. It's a lot of heartbreak. But if you can do something like what John's doing and it could save one life, it's all worth it, isn't it? That's the key.
Absolutely.
You know, it really is worth it. So and we know we keep asking for people to dig deep. But, you know, it's anything you could afford, really, isn't it? That's
exactly.
The key.
Even a penny or a pound. All right, you guys, don't forget as well to also go visit our good friends at Football Prizes. The King's shirt is up for grabs. So be sure to go get your ticket. I'm going to give away a free ticket, but I'm going to do it on our Twitter account, not on the show. So you'll have to go over to Twitter and a bit later on, and I'll be giving away a free ticket for you. Well played, John is right. John, you've smashed it tonight. Thank you so much for all of your work, all that you do in the community, and also being police sergeant isn't easy these days. So you stay safe, and thank you for doing all that you do for the community as well.
Thank you for having me on. I really enjoyed it.
Top man,
we appreciate it.
Top man.
Thanks so much, John. Kev, I'll hand over to you. We're going to be back tomorrow for another 2-a-day. We've got the double bill Wednesday, Thursday series. Stateside squad will be back at 9:30 Pacific time tomorrow morning. We have Seaton O'Connor from the Dan Patrick Show. JJ Garcia will be back as well for that one. And then we have the French football show at midday Pacific time, 8 o'clock in the US. Just keep an eye out on the community page on YouTube and also Twitter for those shows. 2 goldies for you tomorrow. Goldies? Goldens. Anyway, you know what I mean. Kev.
Well, everyone, I've got to say thanks to John for coming on. Really great cause. Support him, squaddies. I know you will. And everybody who watches this. Sophie, hostess with the mostest, as always. And thanks to you, squaddies, for always joining us, being a part of this football community on the Highbury squad. So you know what comes next, squaddies. It's up the Arsenal, and I salute you.
Mind the gap between the train and the platform. Please stand clear of the discussion doors. The next stop is Highbury Squad.